Hello, my name is Kai Pata, and I am the professor of lifelong and informal learning in Tallinn University. And I am going to present you um, my thinking about how can digital heritage support social and cultural resilience. The role of resilience in the cultural ecosystem is deeply related with the culture. The changes in the shrinking rural communities require them to go through deep sustainability transitions to be resilient. Holtorf defines cultural resilience as the capability of cultural system consisting of cultural processes in relevant communities to absorb adversity, deal with change, and continue to develop. The notion of cultural resilience suggests that individuals and communities can deal with and overcome adversity not just based on individual characteristics alone, but also from the support of larger socio-cultural factors. Klaus Ehlers defined culturally focused resilient adaptation as how culture and socio-cultural context have an effect on resilient outcomes. What way digital heritage ecosystem acts for resilience and sustainability? Katariina Soini and Jos de Seyn in their article about culture sustainability relations state that culture could be seen from three viewpoints. Culture in sustainability describes its complementing role as a capital of the societies. Culture for sustainability describes its affording role as a way of life, a resource for interactions. And culture as sustainability describes its transformative role, the semiosis of cultural development processes. Which of these roles does digital heritage currently provide, and how well? I aim to indicate to the gaps in the communities and heritage institutions to make use of the digital heritage objects as part of their culture. I have taken here one of the objects from the MUIS database, and I want to explain what way digital heritage ecosystem acts for resilience and sustainability. We can see that from the point of view of culture in sustainability, the digital heritage objects can be presented very different ways. They can be presented as a granular or patent, showing different possibilities, how this object occurs in the heritage systems, and also in a holistic ways, showing the objects together with the different contexts they have. And this context can be stable as one time recorded in the heritage systems, or they could be also dynamically changing. And this changing can take place through contextualized cultural versioning that the communities would do with the object. Also, it is important what kind of affordances the digital heritage objects have. Are these affordances for machines or for human cultural interactivity with the objects? If we look at digital heritage objects from the point of view of culture for sustainability, we can think of different type of processes that people do with these cultural heritage objects, such as different types of reasoning, deductive reasoning when they have some idea, or inductive reasoning when they are looking at the patent data, or abductive reasoning, trying to transform something into the different new versions. This interaction can be individual or collaborative, but also it could be collective through social technical interactions, so that some of the interactions would dynamically be updated to the system and mature these digital heritage objects for the communities. This interaction can be also learning interaction or playing interaction or interaction for creativity or for marketing or for communicating and some other more types. If we look as a culture as a sustainability, we can think of different type of semiotical processes happening, such as these cultural heritage objects serve as cross-border objects through trans-time, trans-context, trans-cultures, or even trans-spaces, such as virtual and actual spaces. And when people use these, they would be translating these objects into new context, and this translation may very often be untranslatable. And these actions, semiosis, will be related holistically with the resilience of the communities. They're coping, adapting, and transforming. Keck and Sakdapolrak propose to define resilience as being composed of 3 dimensions. Some of these dimensions are individual in the systems, and some of these dimensions may be also at the system level, such as coping capacities are the abilities of social actors to cope with and overcome all kinds of adversities. So how does coping happen with digital heritage? Adaptive capacities are such that people learn from the past experiences and start adjusting themselves to the future challenges in their everyday lives using, for example, digital heritage. And transformative capacities are related with the system ability to craft sets of institutions that foster individual welfare and sustainable societal robustness towards future crises. Here I am presenting one of the schemas to show what kind of gaps in the cultural ecosystem niches there might be when we try to build cultural resilience with digital heritage loop. You can see here 3 different circles that present on the left the collective cultural niche as a dynamic space. In the middle, the individual cognitive niche, when individuals are interacting with the collective cultural niche. And also on the right, the individual cognitive niche, when they are trying to stabilize their cognitive niches through the interactions and make meaning for them. How the cultural ecosystems usually work. And I have presented here this cultural ecosystem with the components. With the blue, I have marked the parts that probably are mediated with the cultural heritage systems, and all the rest is something that is either in the virtual environment or in the real environment that surround us in everyday life. I wanted to present how this cultural ecosystem systemically is working. And I would start from the point how individuals adapt themselves or cope with the cultural, collective cultural niches. Usually when they are interacting with the museums and such as with the MUIS database or other databases of digital heritage, they need to find what is there in the collective cultural niche level? What type of awareness they have of this cultural niche. They could use just the search engines, or they could also use AI-improved engines that could read, for example, not only the different metadata about the objects, but they could also read the context of the objects or the visuals of the objects or the texts about the objects. So this type of awareness in digital heritage systems is increasing. When people usually search something, they have the need for the real need to use something from our cultural heritage systems. And there are still quite a lot of difficulties in even knowing that these systems exist, that people in the countryside, in the communities, do not have awareness of these digitalized heritage systems, and they don't have good digital competencies to use it. And thus they have not been thinking also for what purposes they would need to use this digital heritage. If we think who would be responsible of mediating this process, that people in the communities, different people from different ages would be interested to use digital heritage that would help them to be more culturally resilient, we can think of different scaffolded paths, such as learning paths where teachers are helping people, young people, people from informal learning to make sense of digital heritage in the collective level. There could also be co-creative approaches that arise from the communities themselves. Usually, people need to carry out different actions many times to go through discovery and reuse of novel approaches, while during this process, some stabilization of individual cognitive niches takes place. And very much of these activities are currently taking part outside of museum systems, in different social media systems, but also in the activities that people might be doing for their personal purposes, but less for the purposes that are collectively driven. One of those examples that is using collective cultural niche resources for interactions is Ajabike, that is using a different type of images to represent these images in the new time. Another interesting opportunity for the schools is e-schoolbag. E-schoolbag is helping the teachers to embed cultural heritage resources into the learning resources of children. However, there are several difficulties why it does not work. For example, the search when you create the learning resources does not work very well, and it is very time-consuming to find suitable resources. When we talk about the heritage loop, so these different type of appropriations of digital heritage to new situations should also go back to the digital heritage databases or to some other systems where they are shared with other people. Otherwise, they will not be spread in the cultural level. So one of the critical issues is sharing contextually appropriated patterns to the communities, places, social media, and CLAMPs. And another big problem is the uptake of these contextualized heritage objects back into the GLAMs. There could be many reasons why this uptake is not possible. For example, the conception that heritage institutions should rather keep the heritage as it is, not as a dynamic heritage. In using digital heritage in the communities, at the community level, there should also be possibilities to embed it into our surrounding systems, into the places, into the activities. Very often digital heritage is integrated to different augmented reality, virtual reality type of systems, but it is done without dynamic loop coming directly from the digital heritage systems. So if there are updates or if the new contents appear in the digital heritage systems, this will not be related with the developed geolocative trails and other similar solutions. One of the good examples what way heritage institutions could be interacting with the people and helping them to bring back digital heritage that is in the homes of people or in the lives of people to the digital heritage systems is National Archive example of co-creative activities, such as about the World War I. So it is important in this digital heritage loop that cultural niches in the collective level would be stabilized, and this stabilization requires approval of not only the museums, but approval also from the communities. Which of those appropriations of cultural heritage are useful? People need to test the fitness of cultural heritage in the new contexts, and this creates resilience for them in the new times. Cultural ecosystem as a niche has been also discussed by Timo Maran in his book Ecosemiotics. This concept suits for describing different communities, abstract places, as it is a fitness space in which different individuals create and appropriate their living space. And Timo Maran in his book points to the local interaction knots in the ecosystems where semiotic meaning making takes place. He also talks about ontological presence that is created by physical and body interactions in ecosystem. What things exist for me now and in my short and long-term time spaces? If we think in the context of cultural heritage use, what are these physical local interaction knots in between the cultural ecosystem where digitalized heritage GLAMs are part of? Are the knots inside or outside the GLAMs? How are these knots shared physically and virtually? And to what extent these knots are within the need trajectories of individuals in different timescapes? Maran also describes in his book the need that the interaction between individual and the cultural space should be two ways. So the meanings ecosystem would provide not only perceived and interpreted and interacted by, but these interactions should also be approved. So if we come back to this cultural ecosystem digital heritage loop, we have to think of these red parts, how we will connect these different activities with the digital heritage appropriation in the communities, back with these heritage objects that are in heritage systems. Is any type of uptake of recontextualized heritage possible? Who is responsible for this? How we create the dynamics into the loop so that if we had an object that we would want to use and reuse in the future systems for community resilience, such as here the students have tried out making the clay buildings, how can we find about this sustainable lifestyle, these objects, how these objects work, how we can validate in the reality, in the nowadays, the applicability of these objects. And this should also be connected back with preserving it. With this, I would end my talk, and I thank you very much. And this talk was part of our project that is about digital cultural heritage as a resource for social development. Thank you very much.